And it raises for me big questions, and like, how much money is actually out there? You know, and I know the reason we don't know that is because we're depending on LAPD to audit themselves. And that kind of structure, it just, to me, just gives very little oversight from the public and from the council. And as a result, we're having conversations here in City Council that are completely disconnected with what's actually happening on the ground. And you know, look, I have the benefit of sitting on Public Safety Committee, and we get all these kind of reports, and I ask basic questions about staffing, assignments, costs, delays, all these things, and we usually get incomplete answers, or maybe sometimes no answers at all. But you know, some things that have been very illuminating to me when we think about this department and how much waste I think there is that we have hundreds of police officers that can't even do their job because they've committed acts so egregious they can't even interact with the public. That's literally costing us millions of dollars. You know, this really great document we have here, it was a report done by the former chair of public safety to try to look at overtime. Every quarter we spend $50 million on police overtime without really digging into, was that overtime necessary or not? We have 23 police officers doing PR and media relations. Their salaries cost more than the entire budget of 9 city departments. And we have supposedly over 8,000 police officers on our roads. And look, another really interesting document. Only 1,000 of them are on patrol on any given day. You can add for shifts and things like that. You know, maybe it gets us to 3,000, 4,000. Where are the rest of the police officers? That's not how the public interacts with the LAPD. But we just kind of go on and let things happen. Now, don't get me wrong. The police officers have a very difficult job. And I'm not talking about, and I'm not trying to diss on them or anything. I'm trying to find a way where this department can be more efficient and it can actually serve the needs of our community. But we got to be honest with ourselves. The department takes over 40% of our city budget. And we don't having those discussions. So my amendment, 15A, is trying to find a way where we can have some mechanism where we can actually audit that and look at the efficiencies. And so this would move some of the auditor positions from the LAPD to the controller, which I think has done a good job of at least being transparent with the public. Whether you like it or not, he's being transparent with the public about how we spend our monies. And I think this is a way where we can be a little bit more efficient as a city. Now, the purpose is to make sure that they're independent, timely, and have credible financial information that we can all use to make the decisions we believe are in our best interest. I believe that we can do better. I believe transparency is totally fine with me. Having an independent person audit the LAPD, I think is totally fine with me, because I just can't, as a public servant, I can't continue to just give money away without really looking at what we're doing. And so I don't know if people will have the courage, and I do say courage because I think that's sometimes very lacking in this building, to pass 15A, but we have to do something. And so I hope folks can vote for that, but you know what? I'm not gonna hold my breath. I think I know what's gonna happen, but I'll continue to harp on this until we actually give the city residents what they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, and I mean, I just want to, you know, I know we all know what this is. This is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and this is politics at its best. I want to, you know, I want to thank the department for identifying some of the money, but the reality is that there is far greater cost efficiencies that we have to start looking at across the board. It's not just within LAPD. And so for my colleague, Mr. Soto Martinez, who's upset about how this has occurred, I appreciate the frustration and outrage, but this isn't the only area that we have to be having this conversation. We're not having that conversation on homelessness spending and the redundancies that are happening, the issues around the Alliance case. There's a whole host of areas that we can talk about it. The consolidation of departments, which was short-sighted in my opinion, when it comes to why we need to be focusing on generating revenue and supporting small businesses that ultimately help benefit our bottom line. Those are also important conversations. So let's not singularly focus on one area. And when you continue to rubber stamp some of the proposals that the mayor comes up with, you're actually complicit in enabling this. This is an environment that has been emboldened by votes on this council. So I just, you know, again, I want to make sure everyone understands their complicity in helping to bring us here. But I do have a question for the chief I'd like to ask you to come forward. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're supportive, and I think, Sharon, you laid it out very clearly and best. What we're doing is basically accelerating, we're basically potentially just removing from the future. We're borrowing from our future allocations to deliver it today. Cool, got it. You know, it's, you know, we're back from the future. And that's all well and good, but at the end of the day, what we're also going to be putting greater strain on is the support that we have from the civilian staff. But Chief, you know, again, we're in fiscal crisis.
Right.
I don't know what part of that message, if there's any general manager in the city that doesn't understand that, everyone is under obligation to maximize the resources that they have to produce the biggest and best impact and support to our constituents. Where are you in the reorg? The council supported, long before you were selected as the chief, an allocation and expenditure to look top to bottom to make sure that we could maximize the deployment and the resources that we have, because everyone has a responsibility and an obligation to make sure that we're doing the most with what we've got. And I want to know where this department stands on the reorg to maximize the deployment for patrol, to look at what efficiencies we can garner in reorganizing. You know, listen, the way we've got modernization of technology. I have a colleague that just spent, I think, over $250,000 for additional resources for additional technological tools that could be supportive in the West San Fernando Valley. There's a lot of tools being thrown at us to help support the work of the department and identify efficiencies. And so I'm just frustrated because I haven't seen any, I've gotten we're working on it. The sense of urgency is now, because we don't have unlimited resources. We continue to get strained and choked, and now we're borrowing from the future to help fulfill an obligation that the mayor made because she wants to coerce everybody and back everybody into this position. So I need to know where you are on this reorg and what efforts are being taken to actually look at maximizing the efficiencies of operations in the department and making sure that we can maximize our deployment without utilizing overtime.
Thank you, Council Member. We did the reorg about 6 or 7 months ago. We streamlined detective functions. We're as low as I've ever seen a department relative to specialized units. All homicide units throughout the city are now part of robbery homicide, and that's the only way we could do what we need to do, the way it should be done. That streamlined our functions there. We took community relations section and public engagement section and put them back in the field. People have ancillary duties now when dealing with different communities throughout the city. We've made every effort we can to use the very limited resources we currently have as well as we can. You look at us compared to New York or Chicago, we have half the officer to population ratio as they do. We're doing it here. We're doing an amazing job with what you've given us to do. And yet we're looking at people making motions to take additional civilians away from us. We have people in our audit function to make sure that things are being done appropriately the way they should be done, and we have people looking to take those bodies away from us. So I'm not sure what more we can do to try and be helpful in this regard. We're working on a skeleton crew. We're 2 years out from the Olympics, 5 months out from the World Cup, and we've got a deficit. Even if we get the bodies that you proposed we potentially get today, we're still at a deficit relative to keeping up with attrition. We're 1,400 bodies down from where we were in 2019. We're going in the wrong direction. And so we are trying to be as efficient as we possibly can be, as responsible as we possibly can be. Based on last year, with one disaster after another that we went through, we still were able to get crime down in every category, and as you've heard, homicides down to the levels we haven't seen since 1966. This department is doing amazing things for the residents of this city, but it doesn't seem to be appreciated. And
no, Chief, I think that's the wrong approach, because that's not what we're talking about. I'm asking for,
I gave it to you.
because what I have yet to see, okay, in terms of the department that you inherited and what we have now in terms of the staffing.
Right.
And I'm asking this question because I also saw a reactive response with, and I still not really fully understood some of the deployment, for example, with doing the work on animal rescues in Skid Row when we can't fully fund our animal shelters. So it's just about making better use of the resources that we have. And so my question is, because I haven't seen an org chart that looks any different from what was inherited. So you're telling me that all these changes happened 6 months ago. That's news to me. And all I'm asking for, because we have, I did this, when I was on budget, and it's not singling out any one department, and it's not that it's not appreciated. It's about making sure that everyone understands is that we're trying to make the most with what we've got.
Oh, we understand.
And so it's not about being not appreciative. It's about making sure that we can be very transparent about maximizing the use of the dollars, and then not getting, and again, you're kind of caught in the crossfire between actions that are being taken at the executive level and forcing, on the day that this council, 9, 10 people voted to consolidate a department, that evening it was like, oh, hey, spend another $4.4 million. We gave the green light without you all knowing. That was the nonsense that's been happening. So you're kind of caught in this crossfire, but understand that there's still an obligation that we have requested. I know I requested a long time ago, about making sure that we can maximize the deployment with the resources, and whatever the reorg is from the administration side down, to ensuring that people on the street, because when I see the stuff that's happening in Encino or any one of our communities, we want to make sure that we're making the most with what we've got, and that's what I'm asking for. And so I have not seen any changes. It was not made clear to me that this was happening, that this happened 6 months ago, because that wasn't the response that I got when we were talking about this in December, and I asked this question.
Yeah.
So I mean,
We're happy to share whatever we have with
Great.
you. It was in the newspaper. It was written up 6 months ago. It was a pretty public.
All right, look forward to seeing the comparison
Okay.
between what you got now and what you inherited, to see
Okay.
what and reflect what those differences are. But again, this is all about making sure that we make the most of what we've got.
Absolutely.
And my other concern is because we know how critical the civilian staff is to ensuring that we can still maintain a maximum deployment of sworn officers out in the field, and that's what we want to get to.
Right.
We want to make sure that the presence is there, that they get the support that they need, and we're just trying, listen, there's not a single department that I certainly don't go about or effort or funding. I've said it, whether it's on homelessness, it doesn't matter. I've asked these same questions of every single department when I've had the opportunity.
Right.
So no one is being singled out. But this is the crisis in the moment that we're in. And so we have to all figure out and put our heads together to make sure how we make the best of that. But I look forward to my colleagues and providing that same level of scrutiny with every other expenditure that's happening in the city, and not taking the benefits of political deployment of encampment resolutions as the green light for them to continue to fund certain efforts. So, again, it's not necessarily just about you. This is about top to bottom. We have to make sure that we're looking at every dollar spent.
Sure.
And making sure that we're making the most of it. So I look
appreciate
forward
that.
to seeing that reorg and looking and making a comparison to what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
And I think going on to Sharon's point, I mean, when I talk to our downtown stakeholders, we've talked to the department at Central, and even Deputy Mayor Clark, it always ends up being, it's about deployment. It's about deployment. And it's very interesting to hear today that Councilmember Soto Martinez says on any given day, there's only 1,000 police officers being deployed or out there on the beat. And so when we're thinking about deployment and where we're dipping into money for comp time and how the savings comes from comp time, Sharon, just to uplift again what you said, if we're using comp time to get financial savings, it comes at the service expense that we have less people, officers, actually deployed, right?
Right.
So we're making an exchange for whatever it is, this financial cost for even less service, which is what we've been doing in this body since I got here and even before. And to Councilmember Rodriguez's point, your department is not special in that it's under this kind of scrutiny. I mean, in this district, in this city, I had to put $1 million for a 4-person crew for street lighting throughout my district. And in 3 months in Boyle Heights, they did 90 lights. In the budget, we didn't allocate $15 million for every single council district so that we each had a street lighting crew. That's something that we're going to each have to fight for if that's what we want. But we are not there, and BSL is not coming before us, and we're not all begging for our council districts to get that extra street lighting crew just to light it up, even though you see every other week there's an article about their neighborhood being in the dark. And so public safety is a system, and we have faced with a lot of tough choices. And if the money is just not there right now, and I think Councilmember Rodriguez talking about the future money and who we're borrowing from is our future selves, it just gives me a lot of pause and think about how much risk we're exposing ourselves to when we are telling the other departments to sit tight and they're not coming asking for more in the middle of the year before our next budget cycle. And even to Councilmember Ramon and Councilmember Hernandez's point, which is, it seems like we're going to be at a $300 million deficit again. And how are we going to actually close that gap if we continue to overspending? And that's already with the projected overspending without seeming to consider the $25 million before us. And so with that, I just have real concerns about continuing to expend when all of our city departments are hurting and public safety is a system. I mean, ideally we want our streets to be safe even before the siren turns on. We want the lights on. We want kids to be able to get home safe. We don't even want to have to call the cops, right? I think we all agree upon that. So I think, we're in a really tough place. And so I don't know if we can find the money for this right now. And so respectfully, I'm going to vote no against this.
Thank you.
When we look at budget cycles, it's really important to note that while we have certain obligations in the budgets, it is always the case that the mayor proposes a budget and we get to consider a budget. We don't have zero-based budgeting, but these decisions are in front of us. It's not like today's action puts us in a position where we have to spend the $25 million. I hope we do. But the reality is that we don't lay off. Let's say worst case. We have a gap of $25 million on police hiring. You know what we do? We reduce hiring next year. Attrition takes care of it. Not where I want to go, but there will never be a case where we are firing officers to hire officers. It's just mathematically and as a matter of policy and as a matter of law, it's not something we could probably do. So what I want to say, members, is that we really have put ourselves in a position today where we get to take funding because of the hard work of Budget and Finance Committee and the hard work of staff. And thank you again, Madam Chair. We take some funding that was not going to be spent out of LAPD, and we put it into the hiring of officers so we can get to that number, and we put ourselves in a position where the mayor gets to propose a budget, and we get to decide how we're going to react to that budget, and put ourselves in a position where we can stay at or get to or go above attrition. And so I really appreciate all of the hard work. I do want to say on the package in front of us also has some hiring in the personnel department, which is very important, that we put personnel in a position where we can avail ourselves of these great recruits. That's the other issue. As opposed to acting today or waiting for April or waiting for the new year, we have all worked very, very hard, and we put ourselves in a position where we have a great set of recruits right now. And those lists don't last forever. They do expire. And so I think it's important for us to act on those now using money out of LAPD.
15A will go to Personnel Committee. Mr. Soto Martinez.
Happy to do that. I just hope we can review it expeditiously. And, at some point before the budget discussions really heat up, because I do want to have that be part of the conversations we have for the larger city. Thank you. Great. We can prefer.
All right, so what's before us, Madam Clerk?
Mr. President, now that 15A is referred to Personnel and Hiring Committee, what is before council now is item 15.
All right, let's open the roll on item 15, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes, 3 noes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
No, please. Thank you. You're so fast.
All right. Anybody else? All right.
Then, Mr. President, for the record, the final vote for item 15 is 9 ayes and 4 noes.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, other Chief, for being with us today, and members of the committee who got us to this point. What's next, Madam Clerk?